The story of the 1973 Sam Houston Texan football team is very unique and very noteworthy in this city's sports history. Coach Hyden's team was coming off a 6-3-1 season the year before, and this squad for the upcoming campaign felt they could accomplish maybe the ultimate goal. This is their story.
Yes, we thought we could be good. We were small in numbers and small in size for a high school football team, but we had big dreams and expected to go pretty far in the playoffs. Well, you got to start with Reuben Tomlin, the quarterback, and Ronald Burns, the running back, John Smitty, Mark Krug, Dino Urquidy, Steve Cunningham, Drew Perkins, and Ron Latham, Bruce Laughlin, Jeff Harton, just to name a few.
The 1973 season actually started as the Texans met the state-ranked Temple Wildcats in a scrimmage. The Wildcats discovered the Texan defense and found it wouldn't be easy to run or pass against the small but the quick Texan line. And Sam Houston's offense was also taking shape and showing signs of the greatness to come. Sam Houston faced 3 opponents this year they had never defeated. The first of these was Denton. The Broncos had stopped successful Sam seasons 3 times before. But the 73 Texans' momentum now shifted into high gear. Derek Mott ended this drive with a 1-yard touchdown run. Reuben Tomlin continued his passing to Tommy Scott. And Ronald Burns scored his 6th touchdown of the year. Defensively for the Texans, Drew Perkins intercepted 3 passes.
We had a great defense. They don't score, they don't win. Basically, that's kind of how we looked at it. We knew the offense could score. We played as such a unit. Everybody knew their job. It was good. When you had a tackle made, everybody was there. You had 5 or 6 guys. Good unit.
And the Texan line, led by Alan Fine, harassed the Bronco quarterback and in general dealt misery to the Denton offense. Sam Houston opened its district play with a 35-13 blasting of the MacArthur Cardinals. It was Derek Mott and Ronald Burns night as the Texans, for the first time ever, had 2 running backs to gain more than 100 yards each. Mott got his yardage on traps behind the blocking of John Smitty, Alan Fine, and Mark Krug. And when you fake to Mott on the trap and hand off to Burns outside, it spells trouble for anyone. Lightning and the Texans strike quickly as the kickoff team with Jeff Horton, Claude Miller, Pat Garner, Terry Griffin, Donnie Sheffield, and Rodney Lewis knock the ball loose from the Grand Prairie Gopher runner, and Lewis Hudson recovers the fumble. It took the grand total of only 9 seconds for Tomlin to then find Perkins alone on the sideline, and the Texans had a 7-0 lead. Lightning never strikes twice, but the Texans do. The kickoff team set up the next Texan touchdown on another fumble recovery by Lewis Hudson. Derek Mott did the honors as the Texans jumped to a 14-0 lead in less than 2 minutes. Arlington was the 3rd opponent that the Texans had never defeated before. The runs of Ronald Burns, Reuben Tomlin, and Derek Mott proved to be too much for the Colts. Behind the blocking of Dino Urquidy, Alan Fine, John Smitty, Mark Krug, Robert Hammond, and Bruce Laughlin, Mott's 20 points gave the Colts something to remember.
The Colts were tough too. This was the 7th try to beat Arlington. We had lost to them 6 times in a row, and we had a tie with them.
That was a big victory for us. 22-8, I think, was the final score. they've always been a great team. They were always a great rival. And growing up, they were the only high school there was. And so, yeah, it was fun beating them.
Oh, it was great. Not just beating Arlington High. We never lost to them as far as JV. We beat them when I was on the JV. We tied them my junior year, and then we beat them my senior year. So we never really lost to them the whole time I was in high school. So that's kind of neat.
Time and again, the Texan defense ripped the Colt wishbone apart. Outstanding plays by Steve Cunningham, Glenn Meade, and Drew Perkins helped the Texans contain the Colts. Big Sam introduced Arlington to the famous Texan rush. The defense forced the Colts into costly errors. A great rush by Doug Hudson and a fumble recovery by Ronald Latham, followed by their trapping the Colt punter, ensured the Texan victory. "11,000 fans jammed Memorial Stadium to witness the big shootout, the showdown of District 7 4A between undefeated Sam Houston and, up till then, undefeated Lamar.
That was a great game for our defense to stop them 4 plays in a row.
Great game altogether. Just a great game, one of the last games at Memorial Stadium. Just kind of hard to, the goal line stand, John Smitty getting hurt and getting carted off, and, you know, we're playing for John. You know, we want to get this thing taken care of. Horton making the great play at the goal line, and then the goal line stand, and then turning it around, and Reuben hitting Burns on a screen play. I believe it was 3rd down. We had to get some, and Burns taking it about 45 yards and getting us into scoring position, and it all worked out good. It all worked out good.
As injured John Smitty was carried away in an ambulance, the Texan defense staged the greatest goal line stand in the history of Arlington football. 4 times the Vikings tried to penetrate the Texan goal line, and 4 times they were thrown back. The reaction of the Viking team will clearly indicate the Texan line held. This night, however, belonged to Sam Houston and to Ronald Burns as he returned the kickoff to midfield to the 14-yard line. From there, Tomlin hit tight end Bruce Laughlin for the winning touchdown. And so, with its first perfect season and first district championship in Sam's 10-year history, the Texans entered the playoffs. With 16 players making all-district, and Derek Mott, Reuben Tomlin, Mark Krug, and Ronald Burns making all-state, the Texans were well prepared for what lay ahead. And in spite of the wind and the rain, the Sam Houston spirit could not be dampened, as the Texans were able to run on South Garland while stopping the rushing attempts of the Colonels. Regardless of the weather, the Texans' passing attack was most effective. However, once again, it was the Big Sam defense that provided the measure of victory. Dino Urquidy recovered a South Garland fumble that led to another Sam Houston score. And after Derek Mott rambled to the 1-yard line, Ronald Burns exploded over Dino Urquidy and Dennis Morgan for the Sam Houston touchdown. Drew Perkins intercepted a South Garland pass to end the Colonel's only serious threat, and the Texans' thoughts turned to Odessa Permian.
Odessa Permian was a hard one. It was bitter cold and intimidating on the field. Ronald Burns was stopped on the very first play, cold, and a reporter in the press box said, "Welcome to West Texas football." So when the Texans surprised Permian, a North Texas reporter remarked, "So welcome to North Texas football."
The thing that I remember at that game is when we got out on the field, they started coming out, and they just kept coming out and kept coming out. We go, how many guys they got on this team? I mean, they had brought their JV from what we had seen the night before on TV. They had said that they thought that if they were going to be able to beat us by enough that they might be able to get some of their underclassmen in the game. So it stuck in our throat.
That infamous Mojo Hex fell on the Texan defense on the first Odessa drive as the Panthers made a quick touchdown. After that, however, the defense settled down and didn't allow another first down until the third quarter. Homer Sargent's pass interception gave Big Sam good field position. And Lewis Hudson shook the ball loose again, and it was Sargent who came up with his second big turnover for the day. Reuben Tomlin and the Texan offense took over. Tomlin hit Tommy Scott with a pass to the 6-yard line. 2 plays later, Derek Mott rolled into the end zone. And Steve Cunningham's trusty toe evened the score at 7-7. And Ronald Burns welcomed Odessa to North Texas football. A determined effort by the entire Texan team gave Big Sam a statistical edge at the halftime. Unable to make a first down, the Texan victory was placed on the shoulders of the defense as they were forced to punt with time running out. The defense responded as Derek Mott forced a fumble. Steve Cunningham recovered. All Big Sam needed was a penetration to advance in the playoffs.
Okay, well, Mr. Vandegrift had announced all the football games back then. And even when he was mayor, he continued. But when we got so many high schools, I think he had to stop because he couldn't do all of them. But we told him we wanted our announcer at the game. And they were a little worried about that. They didn't know what kind of announcer we were going to bring out there, you know, a bunch of hicks from the big city going to the west. So he went up to the press box that day of the game, and he walked in, and they came over and said, "This is our spotter. He'll tell you the names of every player." He said, "I already know the names of every player. I don't use a spotter." And they all, ooh. So they didn't like that at all. But I wanted him announcing. I felt like if the team heard him announcing, that it'd be more like home. Yeah.
The next stop for the Texans was in Odessa itself, where they met the El Paso Coronado Thunderbirds. The Texan offense, led by Reuben Tomlin's 11 of 15 passes, dominated the first half. Jeff Horton, Drew Perkins, Tommy Scott, and Ronald Burns came up with clutch catches. The Texan defense, led by Latham, Mott, Krug, Cunningham, Hudson, Urquidy, Meade, and Hudson, held Coronado to only 20 yards total offense and absolutely no first downs. The Texans could put only 3 points on the scoreboard in that first half, thanks to that man Cunningham. But in the second half, the Texans used the arm of Tomlin and the running of Tomlin and Burns to get 7 quick points. And finally, Tomlin passed to Bruce Laughlin for the Texan score. The season ended 1 week too early for the Texans as they met the John Tyler Lions in Waco. Playing for the very first time on AstroTurf, the Texans lost to the Lions 22-7, but the scoreboard didn't begin to tell the story. But for only 2 plays by the Lions, the Texans played as they had in all of the playoff games brilliantly.
Reuben gets hurt in the El Paso Coronado game. His ankle gets messed up. So we're limited on what we can do running the veer and everything else because his mobility. But when you talk about John Tyler and what, I just remember on the scouting report with Earl Campbell, they had Superman. This guy, and you know, we'd faced guys all year. We pretty much stopped anybody, but we started watching the film on Earl Campbell, and we knew he was going to be a little bit different, and he was.
And I told the team, don't worry about Earl Campbell. Anybody that big can't be that fast. I learned to eat those words, but stop Earl Campbell. We stopped him because he ran 1 play for 60 yards and 20 plays for 60 yards. So he averaged about 3 yards a carry outside of that 60-yard run. The whole school was excited too, and our principal, Bud Remenzi, he was a nucleus of our school. He got excited at pep rallies and started yelling and leading the yells, and it was a great time.
It wasn't the rivalry that it was during just regular district play. They really did back, and we got back the Texans, and we got many telegrams and cards and phone calls from people just all over everywhere. It was just sort of unreal.
Lewis Hudson gave the Tyler All-State tailback a taste of the linebacking blitz, and Derek Mott recovered for the Texans. The whole Texan defense got into the act on this play. In fact, the Texan defense had one of its very best games. Tyler hadn't been forced to punt too often this year, and Ronald Burns had waited several games for his chance to field this one. Whether he scored or not makes little difference now, but if you think he did, you'll not get much of an argument from anyone who witnessed the game. The first time Reuben Tomlin ever touched the football as a varsity player, he ran for a touchdown. And 3 years later, he ends his high school career in the same manner, scoring the last touchdown of 1973. Then Steve Cunningham does his thing one more time. No one could be prouder of the Texans than the men who worked with them. Defensive coach Bill Keefe, offensive line coach Billy Stewart, defensive coach Jerry Griffin, backfield coach Jimmy Brooks, trainer Charles Davis, and Sam Houston's head coach James Hayden.
Well, it looks like we are now. That's the nice thing about it. You know, back in the day, you know, everybody would talk about they were at that game, you know. Not just, it was guys from the other teams, you know, like Lamar and Arlington, you know. Of course, back then, I think we were 75,000 people in Arlington. Everybody, we all knew each other because we'd either played baseball against each other or football or whatever, so we knew each other from a young age. So it wasn't like you're, you know, playing against somebody you didn't know. So all those guys were friends. They were at the games. They remember it. So it was a tough loss, but like I said, I think we're getting, with this recognition here, it makes it kind of nice to have it all brought back to the forefront like it is now.
I think they deserve all that you could possibly pour on them, and I couldn't really say that they've gotten the recognition they should have or not, but they've been further than any team since then, I think, has been there. And now they're taking so many to the playoffs that going to the playoff is almost expected. It wasn't that way in '73.
Other than the 1951 Arlington Colts, no city team had advanced further in the state playoffs. It was truly a season that the school and this city could take pride in the years to follow.